I've been meaning to make another one of these because, of course, I'm never done working on carburetor jetting. Except now, I think I'm done now. For this old Yamaha, that 75 350 with a kind of a mix and match motor. You see, that's a 1A1 bottom end, probably a 78. Guessing by the serial number, probably a 78 400. Clearly, we have Daytona top ends here. We got the two VO cylinders. Can't quite see it, but I assure you, that's what it says. Daytona head. Why not, right? Of course, you see over here, standard 1A1 carbs, Banshee crossover tube, and some El Cheapo eBay manifolds. These guys are like 13 bucks a pop, I think. And the quality's actually quite good. Like, I haven't had any issues. They've been on the bike for a while. But this is what I'm running, and it runs really good. The 2VO, you read about them on the internet. Some people, these old forum posts, think the 2VO isn't a very good cylinder. They think the porting's crappy. The only thing I really don't like about them is the exhaust flange. It's hard to tell without being able to show you side by side, but these things are machined flat, so when these cylinders are on the bike, the Daytona originally had a flapper valve controlled by a vacuum actuator, and it had to bolt across the cylinders. So they machined these differently. The 1A1 cylinders, the flanges are inclined towards each other by a few degrees, and these things aren't inclined in that way, so they sit flat. You see what I'm having to do here. These are standard 1A1 pipes. I had to get some flanges. Turns out the tile wastegate 38mm flange is just about perfect. And if you have a little spacer on there, you can fit those pipes on. They don't sit perfect, but with some clamps on those little silicone boots, they work, they don't leak. It's good enough. That's what I'm running. I did cut some reliefs into those so I could use the 1A1 gaskets, and that's only on the one side where these pipes bolt on. On the other side, between the flange and the cylinder, I just use Honda Bond HT. It's really heavy-duty, high-temp silicone, and that works great. It seals up and it stays sealed. So, but that's the only thing I hate about these 2VO cylinders. I guess the 2R9, which is the Canadian version, those things are supposed to be identical to the 1A1 as far as how everything, all the flanges and all the mounting points. I've never gotten my hands on a 2R9. Those are really hard to come by. Clearly, you see I've got a few of these Daytona top ends, though. I want to tell you a little bit about them, a little bit about jetting, because they're difficult. I had so much. I had enough trouble with the, I think my last video was with the 1A1 top ends on that thing before I got these Daytonas and started messing with them. But the 2VO is a different animal. The first problem you have when you dip your toe into this stuff is with the 1A1 top ends and the standard RD400 carburetors, and I think it's the same issue with the 350. As soon as you get rid of the stock airbox, your carburation goes to shit, and you end up just, you're completely, honestly, it's so far off that it's really hard to get a bearing on what you even need to do to get it running properly again. So I had the 1A1s pretty well dialed in. You have two options with the 1A1s, and option number one that everybody goes to is the Dave F mod, which is you convert it to an R5 primary. Well, what this is it's a primary type needle jet. That's not the one you want. This is the 16902. These are actually R5. This is what I was going to run in my R5. I ended up selling that motor, and didn't need them. But it's the same type. You see, it's got what they call the primary choke up here on top, and it doesn't have the machined relief around the body of the emulsion tube. So that's the Dave F mod. You could do that. It works okay. It's better than the crappy stock carbs when you just pull the airbox off and you put some filters on. This thing's got a Y-boot set up over here. So what works even better still in the Dave F mod, you actually don't have to do as much as you would think. I ended up discovering just through a shot in the dark. Basically with the Dave F mod, what you do with these guys is you drill, and when you say drill, I don't know, that sounds so dramatic. Basically what you do is you remove the little air jet that's pressed in. I'm sure I got some carbs in here I can show you. You don't have to drill like through the carb body or anything. You just drill until the jet starts to spin. Usually the drill bit will grab the little brass jet that goes in that little passage, that big old open one right there at 6 o'clock. The RD350 and RD400 have a stupid ass little air jet in there. And what that does is it restricts flow through that circuit. And that's the circuit that feeds the bleed type needle jet. And it's kind of hard to understand or predict, I guess, what the effect of that jet is, because it's going to reduce flow into the area underneath. So this top part here sits more or less flush with the bore of the carburetor. So I think, and I'm not sure, the needle circuit, if it has a restriction in that bleed orifice, it's going to run, I guess, richer, because the bleed, if you have an open bleed, it's going to allow more air to get in through here, and that's probably going to attenuate the signal between the carb bore and the main jet. So the little bleed, a little restriction, that little air jet, is going to make these richer, I think. I'm not sure. But the fix, which, like I said, I kind of stumbled across it, because when you do the Dave F mod, which I'd already done, because that's what the internet told me to do, you got to drill that air jet out, because these guys require an open bleed. It feeds that little orifice right there, which kind of draws fuel up through that. I mean, it's not drawing it all the way up from down here, but it kind of mixes and emulsifies right there in the throat, and it kind of atomizes from there. So with these guys, you have to take that air jet out. So I had already done that, and I'm kind of playing with it, and it's like, geez, what can I do? I was operating under the assumption that I had to have an air jet for these bleed types to work. Well, that's what this is, a bleed type. It's not a primary type. And one day I decided, you know what? Fuck it. Why don't I just put these guys back in, just to see, because that's, I know I've literally covered the entire gamut of what you could try, and these things wouldn't run the way I wanted them to run. And that's kind of where that was the first epiphany with this, was when I tried these guys on the right there, the stock bleed type needle jet with no air jet, just wide open, just like the Dave F mod. And goddamn, it ran so good. And I was like, oh geez, I've got bottom end. Because the Dave F mod, these guys over here on the left, the bottom end's not great. They kind of come on in the mid-range, top end. I think overall, these 175s, that's the bleed type, the factory type, there. These guys probably make better power overall. The Dave F mod feels strong on the top end, but that's just because it doesn't make any bottom end. So when you got bottom end and mid-range and top end, you got more power overall. I really don't think there's an advantage to these guys, unless you're running motocross or something. And that's usually where I see these guys. Obviously on these bikes, you spend a lot of time cruising around at very low throttle openings, just puttering around on the street, short shifting. Maybe you don't want to downshift 3 times to go up a hill, So I really like the kind of power those 175s make. So I was all fat and happy with that until I ended up going to the 2 VO top ends. And these have a lot of potential. They use a wider, that auxiliary transfer, this guy back here, it's wider. And the A transfer, it's like your A transfer and your B transfer. A transfer is a little bit different. This particular set of cylinders I've modified a little bit. I've raised the A transfer up. The ones on the bike are unmodified. I think, it's hard to tell. These things, they run very similar. But the standard 2VO A transfer, it's a little bit lower. It doesn't all open at the same time. The trailing edge back here towards the B transfer, that back edge opens first, and then the front edge opens, maybe a fraction of a millimeter later. So it's got kind of a slanted port roof. Anyway, so that's all whatever. It's fine. You wouldn't think this little bit of difference would make such a drastic change in the carburation requirements, but in addition to that, so you got your wider transfers, that B transfer is wider, and it's also wider down here at the bottom. So this part right here, the 1A1 cylinder, it's more like that. And the 2VO, they've extended that, so they've kind of enlarged this whole tunnel, and it does affect the crankcase volume, so that's probably where the carburation is. But the other thing you'll notice, that's why I have a gasket on this one. Let me try and get my flashlight fired up. This thing's such a piece of crap. There we go. You can kind of see that's the difference. So I've got a standard 400, if I get the camera to focus, standard base gasket on the 2VO cylinder, and it's got a pretty big step right here. So what you have to do with the Daytona cylinders, I can't find them. Maybe there's some more that are out there, but I can't find base gaskets that fit these cylinders properly. So you're going to have to trim those because otherwise it's going to work, it's going to be like a little restrictor plate. It's going to be constricting it right there. You can almost see it in the video, just without even measuring it, you can see the difference. If you look at this right here, the length of that side, that little slant, over here it's quite a bit shorter. So yeah, that's the 2VO. These have a lower exhaust port, which I really like. These cylinders have actually been ported a little bit. I think the standard 2VO, before any porting, before anybody's ground on it, it's about 37.5 millimeters from top dead center. And that's a little bit too low. I came to this conclusion because I have these cylinders over here. The transfers are unmodified, but the exhaust port had been raised to 36 millimeters, which is still lower than the 1A1, so you still have more low mid. And the top end is still quite good. These things rev. So having done the testing with those previously modified cylinders, which are on the bike, that's how I got them. I was like, you know what, I like that, so I raised these up too. Same thing, 36 millimeters. Widened them as well, so a little more punch on the top end. But other than that, yeah, the porting is very slightly different. The wider beat transfer, I think, is where that's the biggest difference. And it really does seem to pump up the low mid in conjunction with that lower exhaust port height. I really like the way these run. The only thing that really pissed me off was the carburation. So I go from the really dialed in setup that I had with the 1A1, the 76 through 78 400. I was running these standard, I think what this is probably is the standard 400, the 175 P4. Yeah, so that I think is the stock needle jet in the 1A1 carb. This worked really well with the standard 1A1 cylinders. As soon as I go to the 2VO, it's like, oh, what the hell? It's breaking up. It seems rich, but I can't tell. Is it rich? Is it lean? I suspected it was rich. I try all kinds of things. I'm back here grasping at straws again. I can't figure it out. I go richer. I went to a P6 at one point. That actually seemed to make it worse. Probably because it was rich. I think come to find out, that's the conclusion. I don't want to spoil it for you before we get there. But to come full circle, I need to go leaner. I even tried these guys. These are unicorns right here. You see how weird this thing is? It's got the primary choke up here, like the 169 needle jet, but it's also a bleed type. So these things are the 400. This is what they had in the 2VO carbs. These are hard to find. I did eventually find them, but these are scarce. And these are a really weird deal. I think it's either a 291 or a 162. I want to say it's a 162. I'm probably reading that upside down. But this is what the 400 had, the 2VO Daytona 79. This is what they had stock. I think it's a 162 is that an 00? Yeah, it probably is. But yeah, anyway, I got these guys and I was like, yeah, let's see what happens, see how they run. I was disappointed, of course, because the 2VO carbs suck, and that's kind of part of the problem. The design itself is fine, the primary choke on top of the bleed. I don't know if it's necessary, but it works. They just don't work well enough. It was too lean in that 0 to 1/4 range. I needed like a 06 or an 08, but they only make the one type because this is a really weird deal. But I will say these ran cleaner at low throttle, so I was like, oh shit. Maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I go leaner on the P. Instead of a 175 P4 or P6, I tried a 175 P2, and that's what I have on the bike right now. And that was it. I ended up with these 2VO cylinders. That was the magic bullet. I thought it was rich, but I couldn't tell. It's hard to say. If it's breaking up, you never know. Is it rich? Is it lean? It's misfiring, so one way or the other, it's pissed off. These things have you second guessing yourself. Everything you think you know about carburation, it's like, I don't know. Is it? I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting too old. My brain's not working anymore. But 175 P2. That was the trick for me with the 2VOs. I'm up here at 5,500 feet. That's over a mile high. I think at sea level, I would probably still go with the P2s. You can compensate with the pilot and the main. I'm running a 25 pilot and a 155 main. You could go 30 and 160, maybe even a 165. It's always safer to jet fat and work your way back down. But yeah, this thing runs great. That 175 P2. Everything else is the same. The air jet's drilled out. I saved those for a while. I was thinking maybe if I need them, I'll save these things if I ended up putting them back in. I tried that at one point because I discovered I had a tap sitting around here. It's a 1032 tap, and that's exactly the same thread pitch as these Mikuni VM pilot jets. So it's like, oh, cool. I got a bunch of these. Some of them are really large, like way larger than anything I ever actually have a purpose to. I don't have a bike that'll take an 80 pilot. Never had a bike that'll take an 80 pilot. And I even drilled some out so I could have an even bigger, probably close to 1.2 millimeter. A lot of these, I think I have a box of these somewhere. I don't have many. I got a bunch of these VM pilots, but I don't have many of the Mikuni air jets. And those things come in a 2.0, 1.5, 1.2, 1.0, all kinds of different sizes. If you wanted to, you could install those. That's not the answer for these bikes. I did the R&D, I did the testing, because of course when I was chasing my tail again with the 2VO, I was like, oh shit, maybe I should put some air jets in and see if that'll solve the issue. And it didn't. It kind of brought back the same old pain in the ass problems I had with the original RD carbs, the mid-range hiccup. Those air jets are no good. I don't know. Maybe they work better with the stock airbox. I think it's safe to say they probably do. But once you get rid of that, just chuck them. And if you wanted to waste your time like I did, you can get yourself a 1032 tap, get yourself some spare Mikuni VM pilot jets. You can use the stock orifices in these are pretty small. I don't know which one this is, but that's probably about like the stock RD air jet. It's a pretty small orifice. But yeah, I tried that and it was a waste of time, but no harm done, drilling and tapping. You drill out the air jet, you can tap the orifice, but if you don't have an air jet in it, doesn't matter if it has threads or no threads. It's if it's wide open, it's wide open. But yeah, that was the update. Other than that, as I mentioned in that comment I made to that one guy on my other video, I think I was a proponent of cutting your slides to increase the cutaway. I had done a few of these. This worked well with the 1A1. You cut the slide cutaway. These were cut substantially. Had a few slides here that I wasn't using. So these are probably a 3.5 or a 4. I was thinking, hey, that's what they did with the 2VO cylinders. They came with a 4.0 cutaway. So I was thinking, okay, well, let me replicate that and see if I can get these to run clean. Didn't really work, it wasn't satisfactory. It was lean and rich kind of at the same time. These circuits, the way they overlap, it's very complex. So you can be lean at 1/8 and rich at 1/4 or vice versa. So I ended up putting in some 2.0 slides. That's what I have on the bike now. 2.0 cutaway. Those are R5 or DS7 slides if you want to just get a nice set on eBay that's sitting around on there. The 2.5, which is your stock cutaway on the 350 and 400, would probably be okay. It's a very slight difference. But what I have in this bike right now is a 2.0, and it runs very well. The 2.0 slide, I tried it on the 1A1 before, and it was rich. So again, go figure. Like these things, these minute changes. I really think the case volume, that's been my experience with these other two-strokes. I've built a few. The biggest thing as far as jetting, when you make a change, case volume, that has a huge effect. You can raise the exhaust port, you can mess around with the transfers, you can do a lot of stuff, and it doesn't have a big effect on jetting. But if you increase the crankcase volume, it's going to have a very substantial effect on the intake signal. So I'm guessing that's what it is, because these 1A1s, 2VOs, they're a bit different. The 2VO's got a bigger case volume. It's okay, it can be tuned, like I said, the final setup that I settled on. I really wish I could have used those guys. These guys are just so weird, they're cool. There's things I like about them. They run well. I don't know if I like them better than the 175s, but I would have liked to use them just because they're weird and I like weird shit. Obviously, look at my garage. I got weird shit. I got weird shit everywhere. So. But yeah, I ended up back on the 175s with the 2VOs. The 175 P2, that was the trick. Very similar setup other than that. If you're sea level, I'd still stick with the P2s. I'd go a little richer. And I don't know if I've stressed this enough, but if you're not running a crossover pipe yet, man, that was on the 1A1 cylinders, and I still had those. I still had a little bit of carburation weirdness around 4,000 RPM, part throttle. It'd be kind of a rich burble right there under certain circumstances. That crossover tube completely eliminated that. And it helps balance if you have a little bit of a imbalance. God forbid your carb sync or your stops are adjusted a little bit off. That little crossover helps completely mitigate any issues you're going to have with that. So if you don't have one of those, just go buy one. Don't even waste time jetting without it. We're still running the Y-boot and the K&N, not K&N, it's a unipod. Big old foam filter in there, you can't see it, but yeah, this setup runs really excellent. I like it. It's got torque, it's got mid-range, it's got top end. This thing, and of course with this head, that's the only other thing. These Daytona heads, in stock form, they're kind of flawed. They have a small chamber volume. The Yamaha compensated with a thicker head gasket, but they also have about a 0.7 millimeter recess into these heads for the squish band. So if you use a stock 2VO cylinder head gasket and the 2VO head, you have almost 2 millimeters of squish, which means you really don't have a squish band. You just have a really shitty combustion chamber. So what do, right? Like, you'd have to deck the head to get rid of the squish clearance, but then your chamber volume was already small and you're making it smaller, so your compression is going to be through the roof. You can't have too much compression on these air-cooled two-strokes. Like, it's an issue, and you got to mitigate that, especially, for highway riding. I don't take this thing on the highway. I just I'll do a quick shot, maybe 5-10 minutes, but I wouldn't take this thing 80, 85, 90 and just go down the road with it. I think I'd probably burn this motor up. I wouldn't trust it. I have seized this thing on the highway before. If you rich and you're jetting up, you pull your timing back, you run a low enough compression ratio, which is what Yamaha did on the 1A1, the RD400, that first 76 through 78. Those things make like no compression. It's like, I think 105, 110 PSI with a brand new motor, brand new pistons, fresh bore, everything is ideal, and they don't make any compression. So they're reliable. You can run them on the highway, they're so low on the compression they really can't hurt themselves. But these are different. These guys, the 2VO, it's a very small chamber volume. I wasn't going to run a thick ass head gasket, so what I ended up doing with these, like I said, I've ported these cylinders. These were done previously by somebody else in the past. They raised the cylinder, the exhaust port height, to 36 millimeters from the deck, which is still a little bit lower than the RD, the early RD, the 1A1, but it's higher. It's about 1.5 millimeters higher than the stock 2VO cylinder. So the stock Daytona with these heads, the thick head gasket, and the stock exhaust port timing, it was advertised as a 7-to-1 compression ratio, 7.0, which is high. I don't know what that equates to on a compression tester, but it's high. What I've done here with the exhaust port height being raised up, I figured let me try 2VO head, 1A1 head gasket. That's the copper gaskets. They're about 0.5 millimeter thick, about 0.45 millimeters, and mine have been squished a little bit. I've used them. I was kind of digging through the box to find something that looked good. But with this setup, 36 millimeter exhaust port height, standard, completely unmodified Daytona head, and that standard 1A1 copper head gasket, these things test at about 130, 135 PSI, which is, it's high, but it's not too high. I've run 140-ish before with the 1A1 top ends, and that was high strung. That was like a quarter-mile setup. That wasn't like something I would take out and run down the highway. So this is lower than the highest strung, 130, 135. Again, I wouldn't take it on the highway. I wouldn't run it sustained high speeds, but around town it feels great. It'll do a quick quarter mile or a top end pull, but I wouldn't be pushing your luck. If I want to go highway speeds, I got bikes that'll do highway speeds that are a little bit less, stressed. This thing's working too hard at those, near triple digits. So, but yeah, you can do it. 2VO head, a little bit of porting. I think with a 1A1 exhaust port height, 35 millimeters, this would be even better. Daytona head, 1A1 head gaskets, the stock 1A1 cylinders, which I kind of got tired of because these things run so much better. The 2VOs, I tried to go back at one point just to, I was thinking about, do I want to keep the 2VOs? Do I want to sell them? I put the 1A1s back on the bike for a period of time, and it's just so gutless. It's like, man, it feels like there's something seriously wrong with this machine. But that's just how they are, and that's even with the high compression heads. Now these 2VOs, you can't beat them. They work great. So anyway, that's the spiel. I'll be actually putting these guys on eBay. These have about 500 miles on them, just enough to break them in. I think I like the way these ones run. I mean, it's a toss-up. I think these ones have a little bit more mid-range, and these ones have a little bit more top-end, just due to the transfer port changes. But, geez, it's a toss-up. But I don't need 2 sets of top ends. I need to start getting rid of shit. I have so much stuff in here, so many projects. I have a whole 400 bottom end in here I need to get rid of. I have a 350 set of 350 cases up there I want to build. I think that's right up there, right about. Yeah, I'm probably going to build a 350. I got a crank, got a transmission, got those cases, so I'll build a 350 motor, a 350 transmission in one of those boxes. But yeah, I got to start getting rid of stuff, so I'm going to sell those cylinders. I'm going to sell this bottom end. This actually I built, put about 5,000 miles on it. It's perfect good 1A1 bottom end. Crank is rebuilt, got them Pro X rod kits. Made in Japan. I wish it would focus, man. These phones are dumb. But yeah, perfectly good bottom end. I have 1 chassis and I have 2 motors. Actually 3 motors if you count that one. So I gotta start liquidating stuff. But I have done all the god-awful, terrible development, research, testing, and tuning. And I can tell you what's in there is working pretty good. If you got the 2 VO top ends, you need the P2 needle jets. That's really it. And if you're interested, let me know. I'll put these on eBay, and you can try them for yourself and see how you like them. And I guess lastly, the only thing I should mention, like I was telling you with the base gasket pattern on those 2 VO cylinders, if you bolt them on to a 1A1 bottom end, it's not ideal. They are still an improvement, but you don't really get the full effect until you do your case porting. Because the 1A1 cases are a little bit, just like I said, the base gasket, the cases have to be clearanced. You gotta cut about 2, maybe even 3 millimeters. You gotta cut it right here. And you should, if you're in there while you're doing your case porting, you might as well match it. Just anywhere around here. I think you're gonna have to remove material along each edge, because I think the 2 VO transfer tunnels are a little bit wider. So you can bolt them onto a standard 1A1, 76 through 78 bottom end. They still run better. It's still an improvement, but you're not going to get the full effect until you do the porting and get these things matched up properly. But yeah, geez, I think I'm running out of parts to buy. I'm running out of things to try. The bike's running great. I really don't think I'm going to mess with it. This really might be it for me. Stock pipes even are pretty good. I've ran these Tumis before. Those guys right there. Great power, but I don't know. Kind of like the smooth, linear, predictable power of these stock pipes. And it's not bad. The bike still tries to yank the front wheel up. It's and it's quiet. It's sneaky. It's stealthy. You don't get a lot of attention with those chambers on there. Jeez, man, it's a racket, and it's fun. You're raising hell, but all in all, it's like, what am I doing here? This is an old bike. I should be just taking it easy, cruising. If I want to go fast, I go on a bike that goes fast, and you should too. Just buy a different bike if you want to horse speed it. If this thing's making maybe 40-something horsepower, that's good enough. Just take it out there, have a good time. You don't want to make so much power that you're going to trade off reliability. Parts are getting hard to find for these things, so maybe take it easy on them. They've been whipped around the track for many decades, and that's burned through a lot of cranks, cases, cylinders. There's really not as many out there as there used to be. So it's kind of what I'm thinking. Just take it easy and make it last. Now that it's running good with the proper jetting, with the carburation dialed in, it's really a pleasure to ride. So if you're struggling with it, I'd recommend you try that. Feel free to, if none of that was clear, or if any of it was unclear, which is very likely, I'm rambling. It's a damn near half-hour video. I can hardly compose a train of thought, let alone maintain it and communicate cohesively. But if you have any questions about setup, or if anything was unclear, feel free to drop a comment, and I will be happy to try to help sort it out for you. Thanks for watching.